XANTARES is easily one of the best riflers in Counter-Strike history. Not only that, despite being from a non-English speaking region, he has managed to have immense cultural impact on the entire game just through his playstyle. Even at 30 years of age, he is still one of the highest performing riflers in CS, which is completely unprecedented. He is proving that you don't have to be young to hang with the best in the world. Despite his skill, fame, and his long, now 12-year career, when we take a look at his achievements, you'd be surprised to find out how little trophies he has actually lifted. Why? Was he at fault in some way, or was it just a string of bad luck? It would be easy to just blame the fact that he stayed loyal to the Turkish scene, but in reality, it is much more complicated than that. In fact, he has often been much closer to greatness than we remember. But to understand why he's often failed to make it past the finish line, we are going to have to take a deeper look at the story of the Turkish aim god of XANTARES. He began his career on HLTV in a slightly strange way. Rather than debuting in a team, his first two events were actually representing the country Turkey in back-to-back online European championships. On the 17th of January 2015, we saw the launch of Space Soldiers, which included names you've probably never even heard of. The squad was led by a German in-game leader of Tugux, who had Turkish descent. He had played for Mousesports briefly in CS Source and was known for playing in German lineups prior to joining up with XANTARES. Space Soldiers were flown out to compete at Copenhagen Games in April that year, and whilst playing versus Plumbers in the group stage, XANTARES was absolutely frying everyone. The run was cut short when they faced a world-class flip side in the lower bracket. It was a close game, and even after dropping a 30 bomb, it still wasn't enough to claim the win. 2015 saw the organisation not even playing on HLTV that frequently, and the results were just bang average. It was obvious. They had a star carry, but too many players not delivering and holding the side back. He ended the year posting the highest HLTV rating in the world. The unit just wasn't strong enough, and moving into 2016, they upgraded the roster by bringing in Engine and Paz. This became a substantial boost, and some highlights followed that year. For example, eliminating a strong-looking SK Gaming squad at Copenhagen Games and placing top 4, winning a LAN in Helsinki, and of course dropping a 1.54 rating as he lifted the trophy at TWC while playing in a complete mix representing the national squad again. Towards the end of the year, Space Soldiers were invited to the PGL Atlanta EU minor, but they were completely outclassed in the best of 3s. This led to Maja replacing Tugux and becoming the team's new in-game leader moving into 2017, and only a few months later, Calyx joined as their 6th man. But wait, hang on, 6th man? The entire year featured Calyx mostly being a permanent player, and it was actually Despy that kept replacing Calyx, Paz and Engine on the lineup. The only 2 players on Space Soldiers that played every official on HLTV that year was their star player of XANTARES and their IGL of Maja. What a shit show. However, this was finally the period in which Space Soldiers showed promise. They won 4 LAN events, including the E-League Boston EU minor, meaning that they qualified for their first ever major, and even defeated the #1 team in the world of SK at ESL 1 Cologne. The Turkish squad spent most of the year around the top 20 to 30 on HLTV. Finally, he had teammates that could shoot back, and hard. With Calyx and Paz by his side, this created a stable rifler trio. The squad, however, were held back by 2 main factors. The first being that Despy was their AWPer, and seeing as he didn't play consistently, everyone on the lineup that wasn't XANTARES would run the AWP from time to time, but no one was a primary. Secondly, they never had a true real in-game leader during this period. The Turks were never known for being tactically strong. They relied on playing basic fundamentals and using their individuals to make plays and create impact with their raw firepower. Spending the entire year yet again carrying so damn hard, he finished 2017 with having the 2nd highest HLTV rating in the world, only behind the king of Zaiwu, who was farming in tier 3. The biggest test moving into 2018 was the E-League Boston Major in January. Their star rifler played very well in the Challenger stage, but was bang average in the Legend stage compared to his usual standards. Considering how close they were to advancing to the playoffs, I think a lot of the blame can be shifted to the star player for underperforming in the most important event of the year. The following major was FACEIT London, and unfortunately, Engine was unavailable, so their coach Hardstyle had to stand in, and well, he was probably one of the worst players in major history. The matches were tight, but they were playing 4v5, and they ended up going out, not even winning a single game. The organisation peaked at 12th on HLTV's world ranking, but only managed a single LAN title, that being DreamHack Open Austin, where they played tier 2 teams and even went up against a Acadian-led NA lineup in the grand final. They were easily a top tier 2 squad, but they couldn't break through. Every time they played at a tier 1 LAN, they would win the odd game here or there, but they weren't strong enough to stay at that top level. By late 2018, the entire roster left the Space Soldiers organization, and 2 months later, XANTARES was signed to Big Clan. After spending the last 4 years on Space Soldiers, and with a full Turkish lineup, it was time for a fresh start. This time, on a German side with a dash of international spice. He was playing alongside the veteran IGL of God B, the experienced duo of Tabson and Tizian, and finally a young, 19-year-old AWPer in Smooya. 2019, however, was really just a turbulent year, as he was unbelievable online, but so average on LAN. In fact, he was just poor versus the tier 1 teams. Big didn't win a single event online or on LAN in all of 2019. Remember when the Germans made the grand final of ESL 1 Cologne? Yeah, that was just a year prior in 2018. On paper, adding XANTARES was a massive upgrade in firepower, but yet the squad just looked so much worse. From the outside looking in, it made a lot of sense to why the lineup was struggling. Tabson and co had a reputation for being tactically excellent. Every move was calculated and timed to perfection. Everything was done by the book. But the Turkish rifler hadn't played in a system like that. In fact, he was completely the opposite to a typical German player. You don't put a leash on him, you let him go wild. It didn't help that the organisation kept making roster changes. Nex was replaced by XANTARES because he needed medical treatment on his wrist. Smooya then stepped down and Nex returned. Nex was then benched again due to health issues and replaced by Dennis. Then 3 months later, Godby retired, Dennis was benched, and Smooya and Nex returned. On LAN, in 2019, they won 10 out of 41 matches on HLTV. That's an absolute joke. Changes were obviously needed, and the organisation responded on January 1st, 2020 by kicking Nex and Smooya for Sirison and Keto. For most tier 1 teams, it was heartbreaking to move into the online era and be pushed away from the LAN scene. But for Big, it was like the stars were aligning. Now on Space Soldiers, XANTARES was always a decent LAN player. No one is disputing that. But come on, he was always a better online player. He was an absolute demon online. Every Batman needs a Robin. And back in 2019, I cast a few games to Sirison when he was on Sprout. And he was okay, but nothing special. However, when he joined Big, the two of them instantly created this incredible partnership of insane levels of firepower. They were both playing at such an elite level, and because of that, the squad won 8 events in 2020, including an RMR. The organisation spent all of July and August as the #1 team in the entire world. The Germans have never achieved being #1 at any other point in their 9-year history than for those 2 months. HLTV even awarded Sirison 10th in the top 20 players of 2020. So seeing as XANTARES was a rifler, you'd probably expect him to have placed higher that year. No actually, he wasn't even in the top 20. Nice one HLTV. Absolutely no idea how that has happened. He deserved this achievement. He should have been on this list. Somehow even Breeze and Crims were awarded top 20. Like, come on. This, however, was all a temporary triumph. Some might say a flash in the pan, as the following year wasn't the same at all. They even lost to Sprout in Meisterschaft. Seriously. Big are meant to be a top 5 team in the world, and now they are losing to their ex-teammate in Dennis, playing in the second best German roster. The Aim King proceeded to win 2 more online events, but the lineup was below par in the majority of tier 1 tournaments. In fact, this was the period of time when a lot of tier 2 casters would always back underdog teams to upset them in online cups when they were invited to the quarterfinal. It was almost comical. They would lose to squads like Skade, Havu, and even LDLC. Someone needed to be kicked, and it had to be one of the German players, right? No. XANTARES was transfer listed, and Gade came into the roster. Yep. Big's best rifler ever, replaced by Gade. Nice one, guys. Not even 2 weeks later, he was released from his contract and returned home. This time on Eternal Fire. Oh, and just quickly, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing as it really helps out the channel. Thanks a lot. At this point, the Turkish star is 6.5 years into his professional career, and is joining just his 3rd ever organisation. Now remember the previous conversation we were having with Space Soldiers and AWPers? Yeah, well, things are different now. Woxic had spent 3 years playing at the tier 1 level outside of the Turkish scene, on Hellraisers and Mouse. He was even awarded the 12th best player of the year in HLTV's top 20 for 2019. There is absolutely no debate. From Turkey, Woxic is the best AWPer, and XANTARES is the best rifler, and yet this was the first time that they would ever be teammates. This reminded me of when Shox and Kenny S finally started playing together on G2 in 2017. The Turkish super team was back together again, but with Issa. The player-founded organisation wanted to communicate in Turkish, but started in English as Issa was learning their language. Yeah, madness, right? There's no surprise that he lasted not even 2 months, and 18-year-old xCloud was brought in. While the lineup was only together for 4 months of 2021, the year was very average. The organisation wasn't able to qualify to a single LAN and could only win local Turkish events. Their best international placement was second at Republic League Season 2, losing to Smooya & Co in the grand final. XANTARES and Woxic individually were playing really well, but I think it was clear and obvious to why this unit wasn't achieving anything. There was no real in-game leader. To make matters worse, moving into 2020, the organisation were making roster changes like clockwork. Now Eternal Fire made 17 roster moves in a single year, so let me make it really simple for you. Calyx was benched once, kicked once, and brought back twice. The team used 2 academy players as stand-ins for very brief periods. xCloud was benched twice and brought back twice. A rifler called Mini joined and then proceeded to retire from playing CS in just under 2 months. Major joined in the summer and was then kicked 3 months later to only return just over a month later. Paz somehow joined after playing Valorant for the last 8 months. I'm actually surprised he lasted over 3 months playing CS again, and by the end of the year, Woxic was transfer listed, so the Turkish side once again didn't have an AWPer. Oh, and they used 4 different coaches in less than 6 months. Bloody hell, that was a mouthful. Despite their constant experiments, they actually managed to win their first international LAN title in Malta, but it didn't really mount to much, as they dipped in form right after and got destroyed at the most important tournament of the year, the Blast Paris EU RMR. Things were looking bleak, until they finally found some sense and once again made a roster change. But listen, this time it was different. Instead of recycling known players in the Turkish scene, they tried to develop a talent, Woxic, and Major realised they can't win without an AWPer, so Woxic returned. It wasn't an overnight success. For the next 4 months, they were slowly rising in form. They achieved a CCT Grand Final and qualified to ESL Pro League, but nothing to suggest that they could become a Tier 1 side. That was until they actually went and competed at EPL. They 2-0'd and eliminated Cloud9, Liquid, Astralis and Big in back-to-back games. This form had come out of nowhere, and just 2 months later they placed second on LAN at PatrikZero and ESL Challenger Jönköping. They then attended IM Katowice and beat Falcons 2-0, while even taking a map off of FaZe and Na'Vi. This was promising, but we needed to see more, as there was even a scare in qualifying to the major, as it came down to the final best of 3 in the 2-2 game. XANTARES was once again very average at the RMR. A trend has been noticed not just by me, but by everyone. He's this unbelievable rifler online and on LAN, but yet at every minor, RMR and major that he's played across his career, he's been underperforming, not the same player at all. This, however, was all about to change. He locked in and delivered an incredible showing in the opening stage at the major, pumping the Mongols, Pain and defeating Gamer Legion in a best of 3. He kept up his form in the elimination stage, and for the first time ever, XANTARES, Major, Woxic and Calyx had reached the playoffs at a major. Unfortunately, the fairy tale run surpassing so many expectations was ended with a poor individual showing versus Na'Vi. This result should have cemented Eternal Fire as a Tier 1 team. Instead, they responded with very average LAN results for the rest of the year. They were grouped at 5 offline tournaments, failed to qualify to the Shanghai Major, where they lost to Astralis, 3D Max and Sashi. What a joke. But yet they made the grand final at BetBoom Dacia Belgrade and another grand final at ESL Pro League, beating the Mongols, Vitality and MIBR in the playoffs. They were so close, but yet so far. The end of 2024 gave Eternal Fire a reputation as a lineup that can make deep runs, but not win titles. They were chokers in the final. Something had to change, and it was Calyx that was forced onto the chopping block, with Jota joining the ranks. Their debut LAN was another second place at Blast Bounty. They had now lost in 5 back-to-back LAN grand finals. Afterwards, they changed organisations to Aurora in a surprise signing, and they kept putting up great performances in groups, but struggled in the playoffs. Despite this, every tournament they fumbled gave them a large amount of new experience. It felt like they were one mental block away from becoming a championship winning side, and with the Blast Oster Major approaching, everything was aligning for them to step up when it mattered the most. This, however, was all just wishful thinking. Invited directly into Stage 3, the squad needed to win just 3 games to advance to the playoffs. Instead, they beat FaZe with Simple in a best of 1, then proceeded to lose the next 3 games in a row. XANTARES was still choking at majors. Is he just cursed? This seems ridiculous that this has continued with him for his entire career considering his skill. These guys are clearly a Tier 1 side, but it seems that they just can't win a title and are a shell of themselves at the majors. Now let's skip a few months ahead. After 7 attempts in 2 years, XANTARES has finally won an offline Tier 1 trophy for the first time. Over 10 years of an outstanding career, the shackles have eventually been broken. He had previously only won a single HLTV MVP, being an online DreamHack Open summer event in 2020 with Big. Now he's achieved his second in Romania. While this is an incredible achievement, you have to be realistic and consider this a hollow victory. Where were the elite Tier 1 teams? At this event, the following organisations didn't attend: Vitality, Furia, Falcons, Mouse, the Mongols, Spirit, Na'Vi and G2. In fact, the only squads that Aurora beat were Fnatic, who just brought in Jacasmo, Liquid, who recently signed a Liege, Astralis, who were playing with Rugger rather than Device, Bait, Gamer Legion and Legacy in the grand final. Don't get me wrong, you do have to play the teams in front of you, and they 100% deserve this title, but I want to see them win a LAN versus the best in the world, against elite competition. The perfect way to even silence the critics would be reaching the playoffs of a major again. Instead, they embarrassed themselves like they did in Austin. It was a complete mirror image. Get a win in your opening best of one, then proceed to lose every match after that. As for XANTARES, he played dreadfully. Not only did he go completely missing versus FaZe and Paravision, but dropped a shameful performance on the third map of Mirage versus Astralis. Now at 30 years old, the clock is ticking. Will he be able to break this curse and make a deep major run? Win more finals and save his legacy? Perhaps even a redemption arc for him staying in the Turkish scene. From 2015 to present, he's played under Space Soldiers, Big, Eternal Fire and now the same lineup under the Aurora banner. He has spent almost his entire career in the local scene. The closest player who has similar mechanical abilities to him is obvious. It's Nico, but their past couldn't be any more different. The Bosnian decided to leave his local scene for the international stage. On Mouse he gained experience, on FaZe and G2 he played in major grand finals and won more LAN events than you can count. Would XANTARES have achieved more if he left the local scene and went to play for an international lineup all them years ago? Absolutely, it's not even up for debate. You can make the argument that even with the teammates that were at his disposal, had he performed better in those crucial matches, or forced the organisations to be smarter with roster changes, he could have achieved much more. After all, there were times where he was so close, and had he won those matches, everyone would be clapping that he stayed, and raised his own country to greatness. He is iconic in the Turkish scene. Would he have been as respected if he just got up and left to play for an international roster? Or chase the bag? Falcons players. How many players in CS history are known for their mechanics? The XANTARES peak, with 7 majors under his belt but only 1 playoff showing. His trophy cabinet feels like it deserves so much more. His individual talent has never correlated with his achievements. And how? Honestly, how has he only been on HLTV's top 20 players of the year once, that being 15th in 2024? Well, I definitely don't agree with that. It's because he's not achieved much, and he's not a decorated player on the best team in the world. And for that reason, that's why he's been pushed out of the list year after year. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Cheers.